So some of you subscribers who are watching our videos may recognize Scott Mayer here, and a few months ago we did a video on Measure ULA, which is also known as the mansion tax in Los Angeles, and I thought it'd be good to get a quick recap because there have been some new things that have happened recently that I think people should be aware of, especially if you're an investor that has been waiting to either sell or purchase properties that are affected by the Measure ULA. More importantly, I think on a nationwide scale, other cities are also looking at incorporating something very similar. So let's talk about that. I think a good place for us to start right now is maybe if we kind of talk a little bit about what Measure ULA is, what they're trying to accomplish, and then kind of go into the different court cases that are happening and have currently either been dismissed or currently in process.
Okay. So Measure ULA was a voter-initiated initiative here in the city of Los Angeles that was passed by the electorate in November of 2022. It is in essence a transfer tax on the sale of both residential and commercial properties at selling prices beginning at $5 million. So any...
And a stepped up basis, stepped up even higher if it's above $10 million, I understand.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So at $5 million and above, the transfer tax is 4%. At $10 million and above, the transfer tax is 5.5%.
And this is in addition to the regular transfer tax, which is state and county and city as well, which is in Los Angeles City, it's about $5.50 per thousand, so 0.55 of 1%. So we're talking about transfer taxes that are 8 times to 10 times more.
Correct.
Wow. Okay. So I understand that there were a couple of lawsuits that were filed saying that one, it was not constitutional to use a transfer tax for a specific need, because my understanding is that ULA, the money is supposed to go to alleviating specifically homelessness.
Yes. So the measure was put on the ballot by the voters to raise funds to support homeless initiatives, such as building greater affordable housing, providing legal services for tenants who didn't have those resources, providing rent relief for persons that weren't making even the area median income here in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And after the initiative went into effect, lawsuits were filed both in state court and in federal court by property owners, commercial property owners.
Understandably so.
Yes. And the action that was filed in federal court was dismissed by the federal court based on a lack of jurisdiction. There is a federal law that indicates that that federal courts do not have jurisdiction to adjudicate state and local tax issues. So the federal action was dismissed rather quickly. The state action was just dismissed pursuant to a motion for judgment on the pleadings in October of this year. And the basis of that ruling was that as a voter-initiated initiative, the electorate had a right to put such an initiative on the ballot, and that it was not subject to the voting thresholds that the state and local jurisdictions are subject to.
Okay, that kind of makes sense. Now, I understand though that when it comes to, are they planning on appealing the dismissal, or where's it stand, or are we all done right now?
So I think the appeal of the state action is being considered, but there is a separate ballot initiative that has received sufficient votes, well over 1 million votes here in California, that will be on the ballot in November of 2024.
Okay.
And that initiative will require 2 things if it passes. One, it will require the state legislature, both houses of the state legislature, to get voter approval of any tax increase. And secondly, any special tax that is a tax that is designated for particular uses, as opposed to just a general tax that goes into a public agency's general fund, would be subject to a 2/3 voting requirement, and it would be retroactive to January of 22. So in effect, if the ballot measure passes in 2024, it would vitiate the measure ULA because it passed after January 2022.
Okay. So with that in mind, if it does pass, I mean, what are the repercussions? Are there any repercussions for the city that has collected the taxes? Now, I know they haven't really dispersed them yet into some of the programs. They're talking about, they've set aside $150 million for landlords to apply for funds on if they have tenants that are low income and that are in the process of being evicted, so they can apply for the rent relief there and have that in. They from what I understand, set aside about $150 million, which my understanding is also that's pretty much about how much they've raised so far, well short of the $600 to $1.8 billion that they thought they were going to raise with this. In fact, I think the first 3 months they only raised $38 million. But if this law passes and it's retroactive through 2022, what happens to all those funds?
So the city has acknowledged that if either a lawsuit was to prevail and vitiate the measure, or if the ballot measure passes, then the city would be required to give the money back. And as you mentioned, the transaction volume of both residential and commercial properties above $5 million, above $10 million, has slowed to somewhat of a trickle compared to historical volumes. And so the city has not raised the funds that it thought it would. It has allocated a certain sum of money. You mentioned $150 million plus or minus in the budget. And it is going to use those funds for various homeless-related measures. I believe approximately $18 million has been set aside to provide persons who can show that they're a resident of the city, that they have had a financial event, whether it's a lost job or other financial crises after April of 2020, and that they can show that they're at 80% of the AMI, which is the average median income in Los Angeles, that they can apply to get monies upwards of 6 months of rent that is rent that's past due. Not a going forward, but a past due.
Sure. Okay.
And that program has been open to the public. I believe the applications were received. I don't think they're accepting any further applications at this time.
Okay. Now, so a lot of this is still up in the air until probably, November next year. And, so whether you believe in it or whether you don't, what you got to remember is that when it comes time to vote in November, get out there and do so. So this way, understand that if the new measure passes in November, then this goes away and it's retroactive all the way through January 2022. If it doesn't pass, then this is here to stay. So remember that going forward in November, make sure you take a look at everything on the ballots and get out there and vote. So Scott, thank you for that. And, look forward to the next one and we'll talk soon.
You're welcome. Thanks, George.
Great. Thank you.